I'd like to introduce you to Rupert Ambil, who is the City Information Officer of Borongan, Eastern Samar. So if Dr. Lau brought us to Bohol and different Pacific Island communities, Rupert is going to take us to his hometown of Borongan, Eastern Samar. It's yes, he is the city officer of the City Information Officer of Borongan, Eastern Samar, but that's also his hometown, and it's very, very personal to him. That's why he relocated to Borongan from Manila. Some news about Borongan, you may have heard of it already from the recent surfing competition that they just held. They awarded the biggest cash prize in Philippine surfing competition history. But surfing is just one of the many ways that Borongan is surfing the waves and making itself a climate resilient community. Rupert, I'll turn it over to you to tell us more about Borongan and your hometown.
Yeah, maubay na ako. Actually, if it wasn't for you, Anna, I wouldn't have accepted this speaking engagement. The last time I spoke to an audience or a workshop or a seminar was before the pandemic. And I also hate talking to a computer. So anyway, we were talking about, I was taking notes when Maureen and Dr. Gao was doing their segment. Actually, I'm a migrant from being a broadcast journalist to being a civil servant. I went back home to Borongan during the pandemic. I covered almost all of the stories that, from all kinds of topics and the range of from disasters to climate change to conflict to anything, sports. But I'd like to tell you more about our hometown and what we do there and what I do there as an information officer. I think I'll just share my presentation. Can you help me share the presentation? There you go. Can you go back one slide? There. I think for me, I'll discuss more on the role of community engagement in advocating adaptation solutions. The most vulnerable sector, as we all know, are those who can't read or write. It's hard to talk about climate change to people who can't even buy their daily meals. So I think one of the things that I picked up from Maureen's segment is that one of the things that we like to look at is voluntary adaptive strategies, community organizing. So next slide. Focus is understanding how things work, or understanding your community and where you want to help them, how you want to help them with their problems or working with them. Understanding their behavior, understanding how they look at things, understanding their perspective of their day-to-day lives. I think that's the most crucial in creating an environment where we can help them out and make them champions of our cause or advocacy. Next slide, please. So before being an information officer or civil servant for Borongan, I used to be the community engagement head of Rappler. One of the first things that I worked on is embedding myself in in the biggest sporting activity in the country, but was rarely covered by mainstream media or by media. So we started embedding our group, our civic engagement group, when I was still a journalist. We started embedding ourselves in the sporting community, in the biggest one where all of the high school and elementary school students met every year to compete. So we didn't want to create a new community. We want to engage and embed ourselves in a community that's already existing and help them with the awareness and the coverage and amplifying their cause or advocacy. So that's where we started. That's the success story that I want to replicate for Borongan next. So one of the stories that made me change my mind or shift from being a journalist to being a civil servant is the story of one of the coaches in Mindanao. So it had a great big impact. It had a great impact on how I viewed on how the perspective and how to help the communities on the ground. So I'll show you a video of that story. It's a short video, but it's one of my favorite videos that I always present when I give these talks about community engagement and awareness and information. It's in the next slide, not that one. Next slide, please. Yes.
Nag-umpisa yan siya ganito, nung nagtrabaho ko sa Saudi Arabia. Una as a swimming pool water treatment specialist. Naisipan ko kako. Nakatapos ako ng pag-aaral dahil sa swimming scholarship. Ngayon, nandito po sa Saudi Arabia. Iba na kinabang, although compensated ako. Pero kako, kawawa naman ang Pilipino. Kahit kako konti lang knowledge ka about swimming, dapat ang makinabang ito, Pilipino. So dito na ko, ang maraming mahirap sa coastal areas kasi galing ako sa mahirap na pamilya. Ang floating swimming pool at sea.
Simula ako ng swimming nung 7 years old ako. Sinasama ako ng papa ko sa fish cage. Doon kami, tinuruan niya rin ako lumangoy doon. Tapos ngayong 14 years old na ako, nag-open si coach ay yung barangay namin ng floating swimming pool. Sumali kagad ako para matuto ng proper stroke.
Nag-umpisa kami mga second week ng April, natapos kami ng first week ng May. Ang competition, swimming competition, usually nasa freshwater. So halos lahat ng nagpa-practice, mga nag-attend, nagko-compete yan sa freshwater. Itong floating swimming pool sa dagat. Sa akin, walang pinagkaibahan. Kung alam lang ng coach ang gagawin niya sa dagat, paano niya may compensate? Ang kwando sa freshwater, walang problema, walang halos pinagkaibahan yun.
Mali pala yung nakasanayan kong langoy yun. Akala ko ngayon yung tamang langoy, may mas ano pa pala dun tama. Yung proper, masaya ako, nag-i-enjoy naman ako.
Halos araw-araw yan, naliligo sila diyan. So, unti-unti nade-develop ang confidence nila sa dagat. Nalaman ko, i-compare mo ito at saka yung standard swimming pool talaga para sa competitions. Mahal yun. Ito, magkano lang ito? Almost 400,000 lang. Ay yung by millions yun. Ito siya, magiging daan ito, magsisilik kami ng mga magagaling na yung mga swimmer. Tapos, yung interest nila, may potential sila, ititrain namin yun doon.
Ayun, mahirap lang kasi yung way namin. Kasi sabi doon, may scholar daw siya, hindi na daw magasto yung pag-aaral namin.
Kasi gusto namin ito mga bata. Kasi isang bagay ito, mapaiwas natin sa mga masasamang ngayon. Alam niyo, rampan nga ang sa Pilipinas, lalo ng mga drugs. Ito isang paraan ka.
Nakatulong yun sa akin, kaya ako mga kabataan na hindi kayang bumayad ng entrance fee para sa mga swimming pool. Kaya meron ganyan, pero magkalangoy kami ng libre.
Kung ang grassroots ang basis natin, yung ma-involve ang lahat, isa na ito siya. Bakit? Sa coastal areas. Unang-una, hindi mahal. Kayang-kaya ng LGU yan. So makakatulong ito sa development ng sports sa Pilipinas. Marami kami kailangan. Ang gusto namin, kami masusunod. Huwag mag-concentrate ang PSC doon lang sa mga elite na mga players. Dapat mag-move sila. Barangay, down to Purok. Hindi tayo nakakapila ng best of the best. Bakit? Wala ang sports development, lalo na ang swimming sa grassroots areas. Anong nangyari sa atin ngayon sa SEA Games? Itong simula. Sana ito ang maging model sa Philippine Sports Commission at sa iba pang mga nag-involve sa sport. Na may parating sa mga bata, lalo yung mahihirap, matulungan sila, ma-active sila sa sports para makaproduce tayo ng best of the best.
Next slide, please. Actually, the story doesn't end there. So after that story, another province, another poor province picked up the story and created their own floating swimming pool. So it just starts somewhere. The story resonates with a lot of people because it's the situation on the ground that you have to assess. Yeah, it's a situation on the ground that you have to create awareness. It's the champions that you need to look for in advocating anything that you want to do. So because of that story, the story is just part of the the success. But you know, when you see something good, awareness, storytelling, that's one of the things that you can help out with. So because of that story, another province was able to build another swimming pool, floating swimming pool in another poor province in the country. So next slide. Next, so you don't have to watch that video, just send the links later. The template in creating champions for your cause or creating, balikan ko lang, I'll just go back to, I think I like the part where Dr. Garis said that people on the ground, the communities, don't want to be portrayed as victims. They'd rather be champions or survivors, right? So one of the things that I did when I came back home is to change the perspective of how we've been looked at as a people and as a place. You know where Borongan is? Borongan is said to be our people is said to be the most hospitable in the country. We're that hospitable that we welcome almost all of the typhoons and storms every year. So we're the welcoming committee. Our region is the welcoming committee for the typhoons and storms of the Philippines. We even welcomed Typhoon Yolanda, Super Typhoon Yolanda in 2013. So instead of being looked at as the doormat for typhoons or the welcoming committee for typhoons, I started to create a campaign around one of the most neglected sector in our country, but in reality, they're the best ambassadors for any advocacy. So we created the Surf City program or Surf City campaign to change the narrative and perspective on how we are looked at or perceived as a place. Actually, that's just one of the targets. But the secondary target is to boost the morale of the community and to create advocates and champions of your cause. One of the things that made our campaign successful is my background in media work, creating awareness, because anything that you do that resonates and affects the community in a positive way should be told, should be amplified in storytelling. it's a way of creating that ripple, that multiplier effect, that community of champions, to help them convince, to help people be advocates of any cause. So after the Surf City campaign in 2019, the pandemic struck. After 1 year of not having any sporting activity in the Philippines, we decided to launch another national surfing competition in 2021. Well, in fact, we were the only city in the country that hosted a national competition. So that also resonated among the community, not only for the surfing community, but for all of the sports communities. Actually, one of the things that we learned is that sports people, not only surfers, are the best ambassadors of any kind of advocacy. So moving forward to 2021, next slide, please. Of the 80 national news articles produced about our city, 38 articles are about surfing and community engagement. That's more than 25%. The 75% was about typhoons, was about insurgency, was about something that portrays us in a negative way, but that's news, right? But I think it's a big step for the community to have something to hold on to. I think with the awareness, the championing of a certain thing that would make us proud as a community, we've created that next step in thinking on how to make things better for us as a people. So we're looking at we bought the first beach cleaner in our region. Only three areas in the Philippines has that. We're looking at planting our registration system for the national surfing competition. We tweaked it. Instead of paying for 500 pesos to register for the competition, you just need to pick up 1 sack of non-biodegradable trash in our playground, the beach area. So we also adopted gender equality for prize money. We're the only competition or national surfing competition in the country or host that adopted the equal prize money system, because previously women didn't have, or the female athletes didn't have the same prize money as the males. But this year, that's our statement. And we built gender ready establishments, especially for bathrooms. We have 4 types of stalls already, or booths in our bathroom, in general public bathroom system. We have the all gender, the female, male, and PWD. So those are the 4 options. So from what we built on as a campaign for sports, we're now building on that community to help us with other advocacies as well. The next slide, please. I think one of the key takeaways here is because for my background in social media or online or broadcast, and from my previous work, any advocacy, any message, any positive thing that you want your community to cling on to or to amplify, you have to do it on the digital platforms or social media. Before, when people spoke about our place, it's always negative. But because of the campaign that we're building on, because of the advocacies, we even trained the first PWD surf instructor in the Philippines. So those are the first that we're doing around the campaign. So we're adding to the advocacies of the sport. So all gender, PWD, environment protection. So you just have to create one hook, one draw that everybody loves, and create all of the advocacies, amplify all of the advocacies around it. And use social media or the storytelling or the awareness campaign to amplify our message. So this is an example of one story that we produced, the stories that we produced from November 20 to December 4, it reached 830,000 people. It's a conversation starter for where Borongan is and where and what advocacies we believe in as a people. When we say Borongan, we believe in gender equality. When we say Borongan, we support PWDs. When we say Borongan, we're a protector of the environment. It just starts with something popular, something that we made a campaign out of, and all of the byproducts are advocacies. Next. So because we're very familiar with storms and typhoons and we're used to it, we all know how to prepare. We stock up on supplies 4 times a year. We have supplies to give to our people that's ready 4 times a year. That's every quarter. So because we're not hit by any major typhoon last year, we were able to send out aid to our. We tell people it's a sister community because Siargao is often is the surfing capital of the Philippines, but Borongan is the surf city of the Philippines because we're the only surfing area in the heart of the city. So we're dubbed as a surf city. So because we're ready and we're prepared, and I think Siargao does not have the capacity to prepare for super typhoons or typhoons the way Region 8 does, the way Borongan does, we're able to send out the aid to our sister town or city. And it's really good to note that we shared more than what we share surfing, but it's beyond that already, our relationship with other towns. I think it's one of our ways to also share our capacity and our experience to other towns in adapting to climate change, because that's the first typhoon that hit Siargao. It's like to note to everyone that we're a day and a half away from Siargao, traveling via the fishing boats that we sent our aid to, that we asked to send our aid to Siargao. But we were the first government institution or organization that was able to send aid to Siargao. Imagine we're 1.5 days away via boat, but we were the first town, your first government LGU to send aid to them. And because we knew how it felt like to receive aid, ask for aid, sometimes beg for aid, we didn't want anybody else to experience that. So that's one of the key things that we want to address or help with other communities. So next slide. Community organizing is the key to any advocacy. I think we have to create more champions. And because we want to create more champions, we amplify the message of the advocacy. Next. So if you're their champion, they can be your ambassadors on the ground. I think that's the lesson for us in our own way in adapting to and promoting several advocacies, is that we have to be their champion first, so they can be your ambassadors, right? It's very hard for people to invest in something that they cannot touch, feel, or eat on. Because the most vulnerable sectors in our community they can't look past the next day, the next week, because it's a day-to-day thing for them to survive. So it's really hard to advocate for something that they won't be able to feel, they won't be able to experience, or they can't look past more. They can't look past their next after their next meal, or the meal for the next day. So it's really hard to advocate for something that is really difficult to explain. So I think the best solution is be their champion first, so you can teach them to be your ambassadors. So next. I just wrote a few things down. So key factors: information is key to success, and always there's always a needs assessment before you introduce something new, before you teach some people, before you teach a community something new, before you try to tell them that this is the way it goes. Research and data gathering is also key. You also have to look at trends and monitor them. And this is the most important part, I think, is work with what you have. And the main thing is work with the existing human resource in your environment. When I say environment, is that in Borongan, we have two seasons. It's wet or very wet. So you can't plan for something that that does not fit the season or the environment or even the landscape or the accessibility of the barangays or communities. Because of all of our success in creating stories around our campaign, we've had a lot of support externally. And I think the reason for this is having media partners that help us. And I can see my ate here, Ate Inday Barona, in the audience, who is now the regional desk editor for Rappler. And also, it doesn't mean it works this year, it will work next year. I think you should always look at how things change, how to improve on it, how to update your playbook. But you always have to have a playbook for something. Next slide. So for me, as a community organizer, as a civil servant, it's winning the hearts and minds. It's a key factor. But I think we have to dream big, but we have to include our dreams and their dreams with what we're planning. But we also have to have, because, you know, in government service, you have to work within a 3-year period. Why? Because elected leaders come and go every 3 years. So the time frame in which you want to have your successful campaign should be within a 3-year period, because you wouldn't know who will win in the next 3 years or the next election with local officials or national officials. And because the narrative or we have to do away with the doom and gloom stories, like what Dr. Yao said. Small wins are significant, and they appreciate that. The communities appreciate small wins and the stories of the small wins. Lastly, capacity building is key. So I'd like to end my slide with my presentation or my talk. I don't know how to call this. It's been a long time since I had a talk like this. You have to if you find your champions, you have to increase their capacity. You have to train them to be trainers. So therefore, when you find those champions and they're the advocates that you're looking for, you have to train them. You have to increase their capacity. And by doing that, you're creating force multipliers on the ground. So I'd like to end my talk or presentation with this slide, that it really takes courage to change people's hearts and minds. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope I contributed something to this discussion. Patagal-tagal na rin ako, or I haven't had a talk or an engagement like this since the pandemic. So thank you, Anna, for forcing me to do this.
Thank you very much, Rupert. Yes, Rupert, and I had the privilege of working with Rupert when he was a media practitioner before he transitioned to civil servant. And actually, if you follow Rupert on Facebook, so many of his posts are about Borongan. And that's actually what gave me the idea of inviting you to this talk, Rupert, because before seeing your posts, I've been following for more than a year, I think, or more since the pandemic. Sorry, my time frame has collapsed because of the pandemic. I've become so interested in how Borongan has transformed itself from sabi mo nga, or as you said, the welcoming mat or the welcoming committee of typhoons to a surf city. and ambassadors of climate resilience. I think from your talk and Dr. Lau's talk, we see how important it is to also think about solutions that impact communities on a personal and emotional level. Dr. Lau talked about, let's refrain from using words like climate refugee, which disempower our communities. But Rupert, you also talked about how it's important to boost the morale of our communities through talking about not just the doom and gloom stories, but also highlighting different solutions. And therefore, this is when we become their champion in this way, celebrating their own efforts to build resiliency in their community, then they become our climate crisis ambassadors. Thank you so much, Rupert, for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.